My name is Tyler Fornes, and I am one of the co-hosts of the Good, the Bad, and the Hungy AEW podcast here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. We take a broad scope approach to the world of All Elite Wrestling and the entire universe of Tony Khan. We talk about the big matches, the big stars, the promos, the storylines, and we also look at it from a big picture perspective. How are things going to change over the course of the next 10 years with AEW still in the picture? How are companies like WWE going to adapt and adjust to AEW? Are they going to be a similar way like they did with WCW in the late 1990s? Will there be a counterpunch? We talk about all of that and more on The Good, the Bad, and the Hungy every week on the Voice of Wrestling Network.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, as always, Jesse Collings, and joining me once again, he is the owner and proprietor of Williams Watches Wrestling. He also has I believe, a separate website called suitwilliams.com. He is our Louisiana correspondent. It is Lionel Orenthal James Suit Williams.
There we go. We're getting the cute names, huh?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that Orenthal James is your real first name.
Absolutely. Look, it was 90. Well, no. Yeah, that would have been in poor taste then, but hey, It was fun. You had to be there. It was funnier if
Look,
you were there.
if a name sounds good, what do you can just because one bad person has that name, you can't name your kid that?
Right, like why should I change my name? He's the one that sucks, you know?
Anyway, I want to
Uh,
give you credit, Suit, because you have been, first of all, out of the many, many, many people involved in wrestling media, you are really distinctly committed to writing about it, where most people have just sold out and started doing a podcast. Because I don't know, it's sometimes easier than actually writing. You are one of the most prolific writers and written review people in all of wrestling right now, and you have been working your fingers to the bone following up on like WrestleMania weekend and all of this various other stuff that's happening. And I really want to thank you for your WrestleMania reviews. I did not watch WrestleMania because I didn't want to spend money and also it looked really bad. But I greatly enjoyed your um, write-up of WrestleMania to be what I would consider to be a fair write-up, but also in the way that I want it to be, which is mostly calling out the product for what it is. So I really appreciate that.
well, thank you, Jesse. Thank you very much. As far as the writing goes, I was a big fan of Larry Zonka, the former writer, the former wrestling reviewer for 411 Mania, who passed away. How long has it been? Like 4 or 5 years now? It was around COVID time, but Larry would write about everything. He'd be writing about, if you remember the TNA one night only shows that nobody watched, he'd write about just just any wrestling that was on. Larry was writing about it, and he passed away, and that gulf was kind of felt. And so when I started the site suitwilliams.com, I did it because I wanted to do more writing, and I wanted to do more writing about more wrestling. I wanted to kind of broaden my horizons, which is what a lot of my projects are, is just me opening my eyes to other stuff. Like I watched all the WrestleManias, every match except the Firefly Funhouse.
Yes, we
And
discussed that, I think, last time you were on this show.
yes, still haven't watched it. Um,
Building up
but
that anticipation for how great it's going to be.
yes, we'll call it anticipation. Um, but and my current project now, as good as it gets, is me finding we'll call it a pack of wrestling matches from 1997, some highly rated ones, some highly recommended ones, and just going through and watching everything. And I've seen some great lucha, I've seen some great Joshi, I don't know if you know this, Jesse, but this Manami Toyota, she's something else. Akira Hokuto? I mean, goodness.
So it's funny you mentioned Manami Toyota. I just came up with I just finalized and published, I guess, in my own way, my 100 greatest wrestlers ever list.
Yeah.
And this is part of a project that takes place every 5 years. And this is the first time I've ever done it. And I actually didn't want to do it, but then I said, hey, I can actually get content out of this, which will be a podcast um, that I'll be doing sometime in the next few weeks, going over my list. But people can find that. It's right now on my Blue Sky account, I guess, at Jesse Collings, if people want to check it out. But I had Manami Toyota at 12th for me, and that honestly felt kind of low. I have her right in between Ric Flair and Terry Funk. Um, but when it comes to like someone whose name I just can type into YouTube with like, you know, blank verses and just know I'm gonna see some great wrestling, she's right up there in terms of just if you type Manami Toyota versus into YouTube, almost no matter what you're gonna click on, you're gonna have a fantastic time, even if you've already seen the match. I think that there is a combination of her athleticism, her intensity wrapped in this like 110-pound dark-haired woman that I've never seen replicated. And there's so many very good women's wrestlers now. I still don't think there's anyone even close to Manami Toyota. She's easily the greatest women's wrestler I've ever seen, and on the short list of greatest wrestlers, period.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that for the first time right now. I'm going in blind on pretty much everything that isn't, the American stuff, WWE, WWF, WCW, and then I'm rewatching that stuff as well. So it's just a whole lot of me kind of just learning and opening my mind to like new wrestling and new wrestlers. Um, and yeah, part of that inspiration was from Larry Zonka. Now, I'm never going to get to the level of output Larry did. Larry would do like 2 or 3 reviews a day, it felt like. He was just churning them out. But uh I if I can't get there, I will take just being the most prolific, wrestling writer in the scene right now. I've got the time and I got the energy and I've got the interest and I am churning them out and it's not stopping and I've got some plans for future projects that'll just keep it pumping out. So I appreciate the kind words. And then as far as WrestleMania goes, you know, I I'm honest about it. Like I'm upfront honest about it. Like I tell you, look, I don't really like the WWE product as it's presented. But if there's good stuff, I'll tell you there's good stuff. Like Punk and Roman, I thought was a very good main event. I'd stop a little short of where a lot of people are going. It wouldn't make my other project is a list of the 50 greatest matches in WrestleMania history. Punk and Roman isn't on that list, but there's a lot of good matches that aren't on that list. So hey, it's in good company.
I did see on your latest kind of write up of As Good as It Gets, talking about 1997, I did see that you got to write about both the Misawa Kawada match and the famous Shawn Michaels versus Steve Austin match. Or yeah, Shawn Michaels versus Steve Austin match. Um, so you got like two like just like all-time great matches, I think.
Yeah, and then you had Muto Hashimoto as well. There was the money end of ECW WrestlePalooza, which had Sabu and Taz the rematch on there. Like
Hmm.
there was a lot of it was the most loaded volume to date. It might be the most loaded volume in the whole series. It's one of them at least, but yeah, it's a packed one. I saved that one for after WrestleMania to keep the train moving after the big
Yeah,
reunion.
so 97 Misawa Kawada, is that the match where this is gonna sound ridiculous, but Kawada drops Misawa right on his head?
I mean,
I know,
those
I know that
two.
happened, but like, there's the Kawada driver that people who have seen it will know what I'm talking about. Like,
No, this wasn't that one.
yes, where Kawada has the broken arm and tries to give him a powerbomb and ends up just. I know there's a
Dumping
lot
him
of
on
head
it.
drops in these matches, but that is the head drop.
No, this wasn't that one. That one came. I mean,
That's
they
gotta be
just dumped
90.
each other on their head with Germans in this one.
Yeah. Anyway, why did I want to pick this topic, which is kind of reviewing the AEW original roster? So Darby Allin won the world title last week from when we're recording this, and it got me thinking about those, that people talked about it in the lead up to, him challenging the AEW originals. I think he even said it, right? I'm an AEW original, and it got me thinking like, who is an AEW original? Like, is it people who were there for the on that like that press conference in Jacksonville when the company was kind of first announced? Was it people who were on, the Double or Nothing the first show? Is it people who were in the opening first episode of Dynamite? Is it people who were like kind of unknown wrestlers and then kind of became stars within AEW? And I think kind of no matter what way you look at it, I think everyone will consider Darby Allin to be an AEW original, a homegrown star. He went from being a did you know who Darby Allin was pre-AEW?
I did. I had been following like the independents since like 2014. Now Darby was in. He was mostly Evolve. Like he was in the
Mhm.
places where like I just didn't watch. I could
Yeah.
like I
So I
didn't.
saw Darby at an Evolve show live.
Yeah.
He was in a six-man tag. I have no idea when that would be. Let's say 2018.
Yeah.
Um,
That sounds right.
2017, 2018 area range. He was in a six-man tag. He did a really dumb spot where he was like his teammate gave him a pile driver on top of another guy. It was really stupid. And I remember thinking at that time, that was such a dumb spot, something you'd only see on the indies, and you would never see that or that kind of performance on TV. Um, which, to my knowledge, he has never done that spot in AEW, which is good because it's still stupid. I still stand by that. But
Well, I had seen Darby live WrestleMania weekend 2018. I was supposed to see him versus Walter, but he got concussed at the Progress show that I was also at. And that match happened like 3 months later, and it was like one of the matches of the year. So it's not bitter about it. It's been a decade. I'm still not bitter about
and now I'm kind of curious, like what this six-man tag was that I saw him in.
it.
Um,
Probably had Tracy Williams in it.
it was an Evolve show, so it probably did. Um, he was not presented as a star, um, is what I'll say. So I'm thinking this is 2017. This is great audio as I go through these Evolve matches on the air.
Okay. I
I
was
do.
trying to go to Cage Match, but
I am
do
on Cage Match now, and I
not.
am seeing. Um,
Do 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 do
you know what?
do 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 do
I
do
owe an
do
apology
do.
to Darby Allin because I misremembered this match.
Oh,
So I want to issue an apology. It was Darby Allin versus Keith Lee and Tracy Williams in a triple threat match.
I said Tracy Williams as a joke.
Oh, I thought you were saying what? So, old Green Ant,
Oh, how about it?
Tracy
All hot
Williams, and
sauce.
so now I'm saying like Tracy Williams probably gave Darby Allin a pile driver onto Keith Lee. And that
That
makes a lot more
tracks.
sense than it being a six-man tag match. Because that's what I'm gonna assume was the match that I saw. Let's see if there's one in 2016. Maybe that's not true. This is horrible audio.
That three-way was in Melrose,
No, I
Massachusetts.
know that's
They
why I'm
ran a
looking
bunch
at it.
of. They ran
Oh,
that Northeast.
I retract my take. It's actually from 2016, this match, it was a six-man tag, and it was, I remember perfectly, it was a catch point, which was Drew Gulak, Fred Yehi, and of course Tracy Williams. And they were wrestling Chris Dickinson, Darby Allin, and Jonathan Gresham. And Chris Dickinson gave Darby Allin the pile driver onto, like, I don't know, Fred Yehi or something like that.
That's a Chris Dickinson spot.
Yeah,
You
that's why I
remember
knew
him?
it. I was right. I was like, yes, because that's exactly what Chris Dickinson would do. Um, anyway, the Dirty Daddy. This
That
is
was gonna
actually,
bother you through this whole recording, if you
yeah,
didn't
this is
remember.
actually a sick show now that I'm looking at the card. Like, there's just like we're like we people want the indies to go back to the way they were. They're not going to go back to the way they were. I mean, the talent on this show is pretty ridiculous. Like
Oh
the opening
yeah.
match was Cedric Alexander and Tommaso Ciampa. Then Ethan Page and Flip Gordon had a match. That's not really that important. Then we had a canceled match between Matt Riddle and Marty Scurll, which was probably really good.
Yikes.
The aforementioned catch point, Chris Dickinson, Darby Allin, Jonathan Gresham match. A Timothy Thatcher TJP match. Zack Sabre Jr. and Tony Nese, and the main event was Drew McIntyre versus Johnny Gargano.
Yeah, man, that just sounds awesome.
Yeah, I know it
Other
was a
than
good
the
show.
Thatcher match, but hey,
I
he's
enjoy
over in
Timothy.
Europe.
Hey, this is a podcast that enjoys Timothy Thatcher.
Look, I like him when he's wrestling Bryan Danielson and nobody else.
Anyway, so the reason I wanted to do this show was to kind of look at who are the kind of the original people in AEW and kind of how has their career unfolded both in the company and for those that are no longer in the company outside of AEW, and kind of look at now that we're, closing in on the seventh year of AEW, which will start this October, at least of Dynamite. Um, like what has kind of happened. So I've got we the first three Dynamites, I just picked that kind of arbitrarily because I think that gives a decent portal into who these people are. Um, but we'll
And
start.
can I say that you picking 3 episodes is kind of thematically relevant because Darby Allin ends up challenging for the world title on episode 3. So it
Correct.
is like a nice little, bookend there.
Yes. So, but let's start with Darby, I guess, since he's the reason we're doing this show. So Darby Allin, like we said, so he was on the Indies, but he wasn't like a top guy on the Indies when AEW first started. He was kind of, um, I would say like starting to kind of break out in 2018, but he was very much a idea for a potential star in wrestling. He was not considered, I would say, like a top prospect. Um, I think like if you think of that time period, I would say like Matt Riddle was considered the top guy on the Indies at that time in terms of like who's going to be a future big star. Um, but Darby is fortunate and he's able to get with AEW at the very beginning. And he has parlayed that into a hugely successful wrestling career, culminating in him actually winning the world title for AEW. And almost out of all of these people we're going to talk about, in terms of people who were not really established names before AEW started, he has outperformed and outachieved pretty much all of them, I think, with the exception of one person. And we'll talk about that person in a minute. But I think
Yeah,
he is the biggest star in terms of someone that AEW actually just picked up with like no real exposure. Like never worked, to my knowledge, in New Japan. Didn't even really work Ring of Honor. Was never in NXT. Was never in WWE. Was truly somebody that the company found.
yeah. Darby, he really has just become, he was one of those guys from day one where you watch AEW, you see a guy like Darby Allin, and oh, I'm not going to see a guy like him in WWE.
Mhm.
And, some people would say that in a derogatory way. A lot of people would say it in a positive way because Darby Allin is a fantastic wrestler. I think what really helped Darby is the fact that he was a very good wrestler, but he mastered like the television match. And so him being on Dynamite all the time and being TNT champion and having that arc with Cody where his first match in the company was with Cody and then they build up, they have I think they have a few matches in between and then eventually Darby's first big win was beating Cody for the TNT title. So having that arc with, one of the day one guys helped him a lot. And then just being such a consistently good and interesting as far as his in-ring goes wrestler because, as a character, he's pretty much the same as he was on day one. He's just, grown up a little bit. He had the Sting stuff that didn't really change him as much as it kind of reinforced who he was. So, you may see somebody like Orange Cassidy and, years on, he's still over, but the act, so it's not at its peak. It's like cresting down with Orange Cassidy a little bit. It's like settling with him. With Darby, it's grown and grown and grown because he's found ways to keep using his body and be super interesting as far as like how he wrestles and how he works and he'll do all the crazy death defying stuff but he can also just go in the ring and have a 4.5-star match like he did against Tommaso Ciampa the other day. Like his mastery of being a TV wrestler in this new day and age helped him to really just grow and grow and grow from day one to where, as we speak now, he is the heavyweight champion of the world.
You mentioned like when you saw him on AEW Dynamite, and you'd say that's not someone I would see on WWE. I do think that's really important to people. It's something that came up in the AEW fan survey that we talked about in my last show, where an appealing aspect to AEW is people like Darby Allin and people like Orange Cassidy, especially smaller guys, not just like being on television, but like being taken seriously, presented as serious wrestlers that are winning matches and winning titles. They're not enhancement talent. They're not like comedy job people. They're like these guys are serious, athletic, physical competitors, even if they don't have the prototypical TV look or pass the airport test.
Yeah,
Or
they aren't cordoned off into like a cruiserweight division and given
Mhm.
like 8 minutes. They're
Yeah.
full-fledged members of the roster to interact with other wrestlers, other top guys, and what could be you use what could be I forget the word, like a diminishing point, and you instead enhance that by playing into it. Darby's super small. WWE wouldn't know what to do with him. In AEW, he wrestles guys bigger than him, pinballs around, and every now and again he gets to beat them. And
Yeah.
lo and
So
behold, it works.
a lot of people like compare. So the first thing people think about when they think about Darby is they're going to think about like the stunts and the crazy bumps and all of the various psycho things he's done to his body
Yeah.
since AEW started and even before that. And I think like the Jeff Hardy comparisons come to mind. Um, and he does, like Jeff, have this kind of alternative um, appeal to people. I think he comes across very genuine and very authentic in who he is. I do not think he is playing a character on television. I think that if you were to meet Darby Allin in real life, an interaction with him would be almost exactly as an interaction with Darby Allin, the wrestler, would be. Um, and he's got the skateboarding stuff, and he's got the tattoos and the face paint and all that kind of stuff. All helps, I think, because it all again feels authentic. Darby Allin is a skateboarder. He's not just a guy with a skateboarding gimmick. Um, but the most important thing than all of that is that Darby, like you touched on, like Darby Allin's an excellent professional wrestler. He is way better than like Jeff Hardy was. I'm not saying Jeff Hardy was necessarily bad, but like in terms of like if you look at like who has had more like 4-star matches or whatever in their careers, and it's clearly Darby. He is a really unique performer. I think right now he is the best wrestler in the world at making his opponent look good because of his size and because of his willingness to get himself tossed around. Like he had this match earlier this year with Clark Connors that I think like
Yes.
helped get Clark Connors signed because he made Clark Connors look like prime Bill Goldberg with the bumps he was taking and the amount of the way he made every piece of Clark Connor's offense look good. And Darby he's the best at that. He's the best person in the world right now at it's not like selling, it's just like making your opponent look amazing. And it comes down to his willingness to take these bumps and to utilize his body, which is like, okay, if he's going to be a smaller, lighter guy. Let's play into that. And then the other aspect of that is the problem for any small guy in wrestling is the believability factor, right? How can
Yeah.
I believe that this guy, who's much smaller than his opponent, could beat this larger opponent in a physical contest, right? Like
Right.
real combat sports have weight divisions for a reason because there's people are supposed to fight their own size, otherwise the smaller person would never win. And Darby is so great at selling and presenting himself as this vicious, insane competitor that's willing to do anything to win that you believe that he can beat someone that is literally twice his size because he has this drive to put himself and his body on the line and use anything that's available to him to pick up a victory. And he does such a great job presenting that to the audience that even a skeptical fan can watch him wrestle. And we're going to see it next week against him and Brody King, where he's going to do stuff in that match to sell the idea that he could actually credibly beat a guy that has 100+ pounds on him. And that's the most pivotal part for him because otherwise he would just be kind of a mid-card guy. He would just be like this guy that's kind of good for some stunts. It's way more different because he is actually an extremely good professional wrestler.
Yeah, he's got an intensity and an explosiveness to his work that really just pops off the page. Like the topes he does, like through like the second and bottom rope. He looks like a torpedo being shot out of a cannon. And
Yeah, he
when you
makes like
see
almost everyone else's, topes look bad by comparison.
right, and when you see him like explode like fire into the chest of like, a guy like Miro, who I remember their TNT title match because I remember Darby literally like bouncing off of his body and flying to the side. Like you felt the impact. And when you see that it draws you in and it really does just make you believe in him and believe that he can get it done against anybody. Like I think in the conversation where we talk about like best wrestlers in the world right now, I think Darby's a guy who is consistently maybe an underrated, like a tier. Like I don't know if he could be in that upper crust, like that top 1%,
Mhm.
but on any given day he can be. So maybe he is in that top 1%.
Mhm.
If
And
any
he's
day he
also
can be up there.
and he's also been throughout his career in AEW like extremely consistent. He
Yeah.
hasn't missed a ton of time for the most part. He hasn't gone through like weird stretches where his character wasn't clicking. Like he's pretty much been on the ball and on the top of his game since the company started. Even as I think we can all agree has improved and further established himself. You mentioned the tag team with Sting. That was a great thing for Darby because it partnered Sting with somebody that was could do a lot of the heavy lifting in his matches to make sure Sting could kind of just get the glory spots. But it also helped establish Darby as this, oh, Sting is this huge legendary wrestler. This is the guy he wants to work with. And it became this really, like, again, like authentic feeling relationship, despite the fact that these guys are separated by like 30 years and come from completely different like wrestling backgrounds. Um, and it just made Darby feel more like a star being around Sting and also getting the stamp of approval. And that's why Sting was there. Like Sting shows up at the Dynamite in Seattle to encourage Darby, and he comes in at the end. And that is really in so many times. How many times in wrestling have we seen like, let's pair an old guy with a younger guy and hope it works out? And it like never works out for the most part. This is
We
one of the
may talk
most,
about one of those examples.
yeah, this is one of the most advantageous relationships we've seen between those kind of like multi-generational wrestlers. They both, Sting and Darby, got so much out of that relationship. It really helped Sting have a really memorable, fun last few years of his career, and then just a awesome kick-ass retirement match. And it really helped Darby become a bigger wrestling star. It's arguably the best piece of booking Tony Khan has ever done, is like the entire Sting Darby relationship.
Oh yeah, Sting's run should be applauded for how excellently that went. And it got like, I mean, we talk about how much buy-in Darby has from the audience. You know, their plan, at least at one point, was to have Darby main event All in America, in Texas. And I think if you ran, Darby versus Mox in Texas, I don't think it does any worse business than the Hangman match did. I mean, do you? Like, I think they do. I think he meets the floor that Hangman match did, and I think it gets over just as big.
Yeah, it's hard to say without with like what would a different build look like.
Yeah.
I think in the long run it all worked out for Darby. I mean I love his match at Dynasty last year. That was my match of the year against Moxley. The drowning match, as we'll call it, and probably be
Yeah.
remembered as. Um, anyway, we're not going to spend as much time on everyone as we did on Darby, but moving forward,
Well,
so,
hold on. Before we move on, I did want to because you said we were going to look at everybody that was like day one people. So
mhm.
my thought was to take a look at the Dynamite intro and kind of
Oh,
go frame by frame to see like, okay, who's in this and who are like the people that they on day one thought, okay, let's put them in the intro and get like a kind of a taster of the company.
okay,
Yeah, so it's like a 20-second video. I went frame by frame through it on HBO Max, and so I'm. It's every name is in order. If I say it like if someone popped up twice, I'll just say they showed up twice. I won't say their name
sure.
again. So the first person we saw was Cody, and we saw him twice. We saw Mox 3 times. We got Brandy Rhodes. We saw Pentagon doing the move to Matt Jackson, the Destroyer off the ladder. Omega versus Pac. We got Awesome Kong, SCU, Sean Spears, Chris Jericho twice, Hangman doing the buckshot, a silhouette of the announced team with JR's hat, MJF, the Jurassic Express, a Nick Jackson table spot, the Lucha Bros, Nyla Rose, Cody breaking the throne, Hangman, Shima, the Dark Order, Hikaru Shida, Sammy Guevara in his panda head, Joey Janela doing an elbow drop, Britt Baker forearming B. Priestley, Pac, Nick Jackson doing a dive, Darby doing the Cracker Barrel spot with the literal barrel, Santana, not Ortiz, Dustin Rhodes, and Kenny Omega. And again, all of this was in 20 seconds.
Basically the whole roster.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I can't say we're going to talk too much about Shima on this podcast.
What a shame. What would his run have looked like?
Shima and all like the what was this Hong Kong promotion like
Uh,
OWE?
Strong Hearts, those
Yeah.
guys.
Well,
There's
that
a
was like his
world
trio,
where,
but he's running like the
yeah, he was
Hong
running
Kong
OWE.
promotion,
Yeah.
OWE, and that was like a partnership. And
Yeah. There's
I
a
mean,
world where El Lindaman was the second longest reigning TNT champion of all time, and I'm really sad we aren't in that world.
yeah, there's a I mean, it's so funny like when we talk about this a lot, but like when AEW first started, the idea that like AEW was supposed to be like every single piece of wrestling people felt was missing. Often in a way that would contradict itself. Like
Yeah.
AEW was supposed to be, sports-based professional wrestling. And it was also supposed to be like if America had New Japan wrestling. And it was also supposed to be like Mid-South wrestling or NWA wrestling. But it was also supposed to be like the Attitude Era. But it was also supposed to be like Joshi wrestling. And it was like everyone was like whatever people wanted it to be. They're like AEW is what I need it to be. And then over time, I think that has thankfully kind of subsided as AEW has established identity for what the company is and what its aims are and not what it's trying to be. But there's definitely this wave where like people are like, where's like you said there was going to be a ton of Joshi. Where's all the Joshi wrestling? Or like this was supposed to be like Mid-South. I don't think this is like Mid-South, and it just was a really annoying time for the AEW discussion.
Yeah. It felt like they wanted a taster plate of like, hey, it's only been WWE for 20 years. Here's everything else that's ever happened. So
Yeah.
enjoy. And it was kind of like, it was messy. I appreciate the idea of trying to be like a buffet of different kinds of wrestling around the world, but they have narrowed it down to the company's benefit.
Yeah. So the first match in the history of Dynamite is Cody versus Sammy Guevara. So let's talk about Cody.
Yes.
So I'll say this about Cody. Really important for the foundation of the company.
Yes.
I think that he was clearly really, really ambitious and encouraged people like the Young Bucks and Kenny to be more ambitious with their wrestling careers.
Yes.
And I think without him, it's doubtful that AEW really gets started in the way that it did. Obviously, Tony Khan is the most important person for that, but I think Cody is a huge, huge part of the AEW picture. I think by and large, especially during the first few years of the company, whatever Cody was doing was often among the best things on the show. He had some extremely memorable feuds. He worked some programs that were really good. I think most people will think of the MJF program. You mentioned the Darby program earlier. I loved the TNT title program he did with Lance Archer, where they kind of
Yeah.
built up Lance Archer during those shows that they were taping at QT Marshall's wrestling school right at the start of the pandemic. And it was built around the TNT title tournament and building up Lance Archer to face Cody in the finals. And of course, his feud with Brody Lee. Um, but and for a long time now, and Cody goes back to WWE, obviously. And I think for a long time, I have been like, yeah, Cody, he's probably going to come back to AEW, and when he does, it's going to be a huge deal because he's done nothing but go on to become a big, big star in WWE, and he has all this history in AEW. And when he comes back, it'll be a seismic shift between the two companies, just like it was when he left the first time. And but now that I sit here in 2026, I'm starting to waver in that belief, and I do kind of think that the company has passed Cody by. And while I think it would be big news and probably like pop a big rating or whatever when Cody first jumped, I think there's a lot of distinctions in the AEW product now, and there's a way that Cody's career has evolved in the last few years in WWE where I don't really see him as a good fit in this incarnation of AEW, and I would be kind of wary of bringing him into that.
All right. I have a lot to say about Cody watching these shows. Um, First, I will agree with you that I think a lot of Cody's stuff at the start was great. My note here as I watched this opening match and like the promo that was the little promo video that was before it was Cody's vision of pro wrestling, at least what he sold it as here, is so aligned with what I want pro wrestling to be. It's like it's part like early 90s WCW pre Hulk Hogan, and then it's part like UFC embedded where it's like using kind of like these uh social videos and like using a lot of sit down stuff to kind of flesh things out, and he was really really good at that. I feel like those first 6 weeks before Full Gear was the closest that Cody ever came to being the top guy because afterwards he was shut out of the world title picture. I enjoyed a lot of his work in AEW, even some of the Codyverse stuff towards the end. Like just him and QT Marshall, him and Anthony Agogo, which I just thought was very weird, but kind of charming. Like, all right, this guy's kind of lost his fastball, but it's still kind of cool. Yeah, a lot of that stuff I enjoyed. What I will disagree with you on Cody is I have, and I messaged you on Slack about this. I have a very hot take that I'm going to give in a somewhat timid manner. So here it is. My Cody take is this. I think if he ever turns heel, it will be in AEW. And I think after the last 6 months of his WWE run, from we'll say from the start of the ESPN deal to now, from WrestlePalooza to now, I think those odds have risen pretty dramatically. Now, I'm not saying it's like a 50-50 coin flip or anything. Like, I don't even know when his contract is up. But I would say the odds went from 1% of Cody ever going back to maybe like 10. Like, I feel like his WWE run's running out of steam. His run as the top guy is running out of steam. And now he's hearing the whole, Cody needs to turn heel. Cody needs to turn heel, all that. I think Cody knows that once you turn heel, everything after that is like diminishing returns. Like you turn heel, then you turn back babyface, and then that's kind of from there it's only downhill. Then you're kind of getting into Randy Orton land. I think he's been saving this heel turn for a big spot. He didn't do it in AEW because he wanted to be the top guy in WWE. He's had that run now. He's been the top guy. What would be the biggest story in wrestling right now is if Cody turns heel. Like I feel like that would be big enough to where that would be something that would move the needle in a wrestling business where very little moves the needle. And I think, you look around, you look at WWE, they've got some young guys. They've got Obafemi. They've got Braun Breaker. They've got Jacob Fatu's not young, but he's fresh. But, outside of that, there's not that much fresh in WWE for Cody to do. You look at AEW, you've got Osprey. You've got Mox, who he never wrestled in AEW. You've got Swerve. You've got Hangman. You've got, just off the top of my head, you've got Darby. You could run that back because Darby's elevated himself to a level. Like, there's so much more for Cody to do in AEW. And that's why I think if he's ever going to turn heel, it'll be over there. I'm not saying it's probable, but I do think if you look at his arc in WWE and where his arrow's kind of pointing with Roman Reigns going back on top, I think it's a lot more possible than it was.
Yeah, so first of all, I think if Cody were to go back to AEW, he'd almost have to be as a heel. And one of the main reasons I
Yeah,
say that is because what Cody was so like Cody I don't know if Cody can be a babyface in AEW because
I
Cody's
agree.
Cody's character in AEW was like a lot of it was based on being like the fuck the Fed guy in the company. He was the one taking shots at WWE. He was the one smashing the throne of Triple H at the, before one of the pay-per-views. Like he was the fuck WWE guy, and the fans, a portion of the fan base really gravitated towards that. That we're doing a revolution, we're changing pro wrestling, blah blah blah. And then what did Cody do? He literally went back to hang out with Vince McMahon at his house jump to WWE and become WWE's top guy.
He was the first guy to jump.
Yeah, and he so it feels like he did what he had to do in AEW to get over and to sell himself as a top guy, so WWE would want him back, which they did, and he went on to become a top guy in WWE. And he can't go back to AEW and be the same character. So he almost would need to come back as some sort of guy who sold out, and now he's back to wreak havoc after working for the enemy.
And I think that would work too. I think there are a lot of AEW fans who see Cody as a turncoat. And I feel like that heat would be, you know, as legit as it can be in 2026. I feel like people would really have these feelings of like, you turned on us, you left us, you bailed on us, you
But
got us all riled up, and you bailed on us at the
do
first
AEW
show.
fans want to like have that in their product? Do they want them to do they want this guy who they can't stand, who they feel like totally sold out? Do they want him to be on their television screen each week, even if he's a heel, right? We're doing this for heat.
Yeah.
I kind of think AEW fans would be like, this guy just hogging more attention from younger guys, coming back. Like, I think there would be this negative response to him to a degree.
I
And I'd
do.
be worried about him holding up to the main event in ring standard at this point. I'd be worried about his instincts coming from the Fed. Um, a second time, like where his head is at, I think
Yeah.
that he ultimately misunderstood the AEW fan base after a while, which led to him basically turning heel without turning heel. Um, I think that the company has there's definitely an avenue that where it works, and he's a big star, so it's going to draw at least at first. But I just think like, oh, rehashing the Cody history in AEW years later when AEW has, spent the last few years building up newer guys and moving past like this original roster. We're going to talk about a lot of these guys that we're going to talk about the AEW, even if they're still in AEW, the company has kind of moved past a usefulness for them. Um, I don't know. I think I used to think it was a slam dunk. Obviously, Cody comes back and it's a huge deal and it's a huge success, and you do it 100 times out of 100 if you're Tony. I'm not so sure about that now.
I think a lot of people would say they aren't into it, but I also think those people would still be watching. Like, I feel like I just, I feel like I hear what you're saying about him feeling kind of an anachronistic in a way, but I feel like taking Cody and like re-dropping him back into this version of AEW gives him so much more juice. And I think Cody still in his head understands like the AEW fan base. Things just kind of went haywire with COVID, and then when he came back, things were kind of just off kilter, and they weren't going to be the same. But I think now, if you play into those emotions, play into those feelings of the fans, and kind of use the new crew around him to kind of, what's the word I'm thinking of? Just use the new crew around him to kind of create something super interesting. I think we could have a version. I think we could have like a version of the MJF title reign that he just had, where there's a million people coming at him for a million different reasons. And I think you could have that times 10 with Cody if he were to come back, because he's still a big star. I still believe in his in ring. He hasn't had any fresh opponents. It's also WWE, and their style's not exactly conducive to great matches. I still like, look at Tommaso Ciampa, for example. You know, that guy's having, SmackDown tag matches that are good from what I hear at least. And he comes to AEW, he's got like a low key most outstanding case for 2026. Like,
I think for
I still
Cody,
believe in Cody. I'll say that.
I think that'd be a far more like fascinating move for him in his
Yeah.
career to come back to AEW for the reasons you stated. Um, I think like if I was him, like that's like a more fascinating move for my career. But what is better for Cody? Like he has the plum job in AEW, the job that or in WWE right now, the job
Mm.
that most people in this industry would love to have, which is top babyface in WWE, gets paid a shit ton of money, doesn't have to work a lot if he doesn't want to. He does, work a lot, but he doesn't have to. And in the long run, he could work less and less because historically that's what top guys have been able to do. And this is a company that isn't that committed to making new stars, that is really reliant on part-timers and guys in their 40s or older. And we just, he can look at it and be like, man, I just main evented WrestleMania with Randy Orton. I know it was a shit program, and all those guys know it's shit. Um, but like he could look at Randy. It's like, man, Randy's been here for 25 years and he's still getting these cushy gigs and making tons of money. So why would he want to leave?
That's true, but I mean, is he the top babyface anymore? I mean, Roman turned and he's technically a babyface.
I mean,
He
yeah,
main
okay, you could
evented
say,
night
oh, Roman
two,
is Roman is the top baby face,
you
which
know,
I
one
guess
A, one B.
Roman isn't necessarily working a lot of dates either. Um,
Yeah. I
but he has the gig, and if he wants a behind the scenes role, like Cody could be fucking taking Paul Levesque's job in a year or two. Like we don't know
but
what's happened there.
I mean, if I'm Cody, do I look around and do I look at him getting, you know, having Paul Heyman book half the show, having TKO dropping people in my lap? Do I
Yeah.
look at that job and want it?
Well, I
I mean,
push back
I
on the
know.
idea. I push back on the idea that nobody wants Paul Levesque's job. These guys are like dumb wrestlers, and
Oh yeah,
they all want to have as much power as possible. And I'm sure
that
Cody
is.
thinks he can do a way better job than Paul Levesque would if he was in a role, and whatever was happening to Paul Levesque wouldn't happen to him. You hear about this in like every coach in the NFL thinks that they can fix like a broken quarterback.
Mm.
Every coach would want like an Anthony Richardson type because like I can figure him out because I have this huge ego that I can solve. Whatever issues have been stopping this guy from succeeding in the NFL, I can do that, and I feel the exact same way about a lot of wrestlers. I think a lot of people would love to have Paul Levesque's job, even if like kind of on the outside looking in, we can be like, Paul Levesque's job looks like pretty thankless.
Unless he's thanking himself.
Yeah, does that count as a thanks? Um,
um, look, I do see your point of he's in the right spot and he's got the power, but I do in his head does he see like the things does he see like the landscape of WWE and think, oh, I don't know how this is going to look in a couple years. And then does he look over to see AEW and see like, guys like Kevin Knight or even like a guy like Nick Wayne or something and see like, oh, that feels a little fresher. If I wanted one last run,
yes,
I could have one
the
over here.
dusty move would be to go to AEW.
Yeah, and like I never bought that there was zero chance he would go back. Punk is
Oh
back in
no, never.
WWE. Like Sid Vicious almost murdered Arn Anderson, and he went back to WCW. Like there's no, there's never a never in pro wrestling. Like
Yeah, if
until
you feel like
death.
you can make money, then the door is always open.
Yeah, and I think there's money there for Cody. I'm not, I again, it's like a 10% shot in my mind. And I also don't know when Cody's deal is up, so I don't know how wrestling would look once all that changes. But you know, yeah, I did hear him recently talk about his next contract. I'm like, file that away.
Cody's opponent in this opening match in AEW Dynamite history is Sammy Guevara, who is, unlike Cody, still with the company.
Hold on,
And
Jesse, say his name right. Sammy
Sammy,
Guevara.
oh, I didn't know how to say it. I didn't
Like
know
the
if I was supposed to
music.
like
There you go.
Sammy Guevara.
There it
Um,
is.
so Sammy Guevara, who's still in AEW, and early on in AEW, we talk about we're going to end up talking about the four pillars branding and how that did not work out for people who were branded by it. But the idea was Sammy Guevara is going to be a huge star for AEW. Tony really believed in him. He's paired with Cody in the opening match in Dynamite. The first match in AEW television history is Sammy Guevara in it.
I think
And
Sammy was in the first match period too, Double or Nothing
mhm,
in the pre-show. Let me double check that
I think you're
because it
right.
might have been that Battle Royal. I will double check now. Double or Nothing. No, it's on the 0 hour, and that's a different event. Let's pull that up. No, it was a battle royal, but he was in the first singles match after that. It was him and Kip Sabian, who is also still with the company.
AEW original Kip Sabian. Um,
Yes.
but so Sammy, he gets this match. He's basically Chris Jericho's understudy. When Jericho starts the Inner Circle, which is AEW's first kind of major, really their first major like angle, but their first major, kind of heel stable built around Jericho as world champion,
Yep.
and various goons. Um, and Sammy, uh, I think for the first year or two in AEW was on a really strong trajectory in terms of he was getting over to a degree, but was put in strong positions. And week in and week out on Dynamite was one of the most consistent performers, was a guy who was willing to do all sorts of stuff, take crazy bumps, sell for other guys, lose matches. Um, was a real key part in the inner circle storyline with MJF and then the inner circle Pinnacle feud. Um, was really on the path to stardom, but this is what happens in wrestling. Stuff changes. I think most people would point to the ill-fated on-screen live proposal with his
Yeah.
at the
Poor
time fiance,
Pam.
and then that kind of quickly being uh,
Memory
called
hole.
off, and then the Tay Conti stuff, or Tay Mello stuff, but he also just he's a natural heel that they Tony was really committed to pushing him as a babyface, and that just never caught on. And he's still in the company, but he has not wrestled for AEW, like on the AEW television, in a really long time. What I'm seeing here is last November he had a match. Um,
Yeah, that sounds right because
oh no,
he's been.
he wrestled Bandito in a singles match
Yeah.
on January 7th this year.
Yeah,
But
he's been mostly ROH. He's a
yep,
ROH tag champ right now.
he's relegated to ROH. He's part of Le Faction Ingobernable. He's working with Beast Mordos, and he's been demoted, I think, by any stretch of the imagination. He's not in the same position that he was, and he's unlikely to ever kind of, I think, reach his potential in AEW, and the company has moved past him. And uh, that's just the way it works. I don't really think it's like I mean, I think like the engagement stuff was stupid and that was an unforced error, but it's almost outside of that, it's not really his fault. Just they added a lot more talent, a lot where that talent had a higher ceiling than Sammy Guevara, and he's kind of fallen by the wayside.
Yeah, I would argue that Sammy kind of did hit his ceiling. Like I don't know if I ever saw Sammy as like a
Yeah.
main eventer guy. Like
When
he
there
had
was when there was less young talent on the roster,
yeah, I could
Sammy
kind
was
of see that
he was picked as
in the
the
same
one of the
vein of like oh, go ahead.
he was picked as one of the four pillars for that reason because they're like, okay, we've got our established talent, right? We have Jericho, we have Cody, we have Moxley. Who's going to be our next generation of guys? And there's MJF and Darby and Jack Perry and Sammy Guevara. And what happened in particular to Sammy Guevara and Jack Perry was they were picked because they were guys in their 20s who were not exposed on television and they thought had potential. But what happened was they signed Swerve, they signed Kyle Fletcher, they signed Will Ospreay, they signed these younger talented guys. What that when they appeared, they're like, okay, we don't really need to bank our future on Sammy Guevara being a top star anymore because we have someone who's way better.
Yeah, Sammy, in watching this match, like he's only really dropped the panda hat. Like he I said about Darby hadn't really changed as a character, but I kind of said that like for Darby that works because Darby's like, sincere, kind of honest, kind
Mhm.
of just wholesome white meat baby face. And that works. You can do that act forever and be fine. For Sammy, it kind of wears on you being, acting like a 22-year-old when you're like 31. Like that wears on you a little bit. I don't know where to fit this in, so I'll just say it here. JR compared Sammy Guevara to the Diaz brothers from MMA, and that just popped me in that match. Um,
Why? What are
I
the,
just
what are their similarities?
kind of like brash and like loud. I think he was going for, but
And they
that's
also happen to
just
both be Hispanic American.
yes. I mean, other than that, I can't really say I see the similarities, but that did make me laugh. But yeah, Sammy just didn't grow. He didn't he never like got better on the mic. He never got like
No.
better in the ring. Like he's
Not a yeah,
good, but he's
not a natural promo like guy giving the microphone in the middle of the ring guy at all.
right. He's not like he's a good wrestler, but I don't think he can get to that, you know, elite level for no pun intended.
No. He's a nice guy in like a party six-man match, but he's not a guy that's gonna go out there like a Kyle Fletcher type that's gonna have a really great 25-minute singles match if needed.
I think he was a very good TNT champion. Um, in the middle of that, disastrous feud with Scorpio Sky, they would have like these TNT title matches where the crowd would get into him, and I'd be like, "Wait, I think they got him back. Okay, let's go from here." And then it would just get worse again. So I think like I don't want to. It's hard to talk in hindsight, but I'm trying to remember how I felt at the time. And how I felt at the time was I just didn't really buy Sammy as like next up. And it wasn't for lack of trying that AEW didn't get him there. I just don't think Sammy was that guy. And now, he's a good soldier. He probably knows he's got a job for as long as he wants it, as long as he doesn't, get in any more fights, because Tony likes him a lot. And now he's got a wife and kid. The wife isn't the one he proposed to on TV, but hey, such is life. He's got a good spot, he's got a good life. And, when I pop on these ROH pay-per-views, I'll be like, yeah, Sammy, he's pretty good. I will say this, All In, when he went in the replacement match for the TNT title after Adam Cole got hurt, I will say he was the guy that got that like disengaged, kind of worried crowd as into that match as they were gonna be with his spots. So I'll
Yeah, he's
give
a
him
great
that.
spot guy. Like he
Yeah.
and people like use that derogatory a lot. Like he's really good at that kind of stuff. He is very willing to do a really stupid spot to get the crowd invested in him.
Yes. And it worked for a long time. It worked in the pandemic with those, golf cart spots and running away
Yeah,
from the
one of the
horse
most
and the
memorable moments in that pandemic era is that bump he took from the golf cart being chasing him down. It sold the freaking not anarchy in the arena, the
Stadium
Stadium Stampede
Stampede.
match
Yes.
was that bump he took. They were doing this match concept that no one really understood, and in the build up to it, he takes this crazy bump by getting hit by a golf cart, and people were like, "Oh, that sounds out of control. Is that what's going to happen this Sunday?" Um, And I think, yeah, like almost like anyone that was a really good soldier during the COVID times is probably going to be,
Job
I
for
don't know,
life.
I'm going to say job for life, but there's definitely people who like got have don't have jobs anymore that were part of that.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
moving on, we got to pick this up because we're through two guys after an hour. We've done one
Well,
match.
there you go.
MJF defeats Brandon Cutler. This was basically a squash match. I really don't think we need to talk about MJF right now. He's been covered ad nauseum on this show. But obviously, a as far as like when I talked about like Darby Allin being like the true homegrown guy for AEW that's achieved the second most, MJF has achieved the most, and he was positioned for superstardom as soon as his company started. And whether you have enjoyed his time or you were really annoyed by him, I think there's no denying that he has reached his potential as a star for AEW.
Yeah, my note here is like after I would take my notes and then after the match I would put like in bold what like I think if they worked out or not. My note here is Cutler found a role. MJF LOL. It's like yeah, we don't need did MJF make it? I think he did all right.
Yeah. Cutler is still with AEW as more of a backstage role. I have been no, I was just looking at his cage match. He hasn't wrestled a match in AEW since 2024, where he appeared on a edition of the Royal Rampage match, where did not actually win the Royal Rampage Battle Royal, in case you're wondering.
Darn.
And he's mostly just he's working indies, so he's still active as a professional wrestler, and he's still working for AEW, but he's not on AEW television. Although I believe he made a brief appearance recently
Yeah,
during
the
the FTR feud, where like they like pushed him down. FTR did because Cutler was filming it or whatever.
yeah,
Um,
he's found a spot. He's, the Bucks bump guy when they need to bump somebody else for him. So yeah, good for him. Good for that guy.
yeah. Then we have two guys that are doing a little bit more than Brandon Cutler. Pac and Hangman Adam Page. Again, Page kind of like MJF. I don't think we really need to talk about that much. I think everyone that listens to this podcast understands what Adam Page's AEW career has been like since the company first started. Not unlike MJF, he was positioned, I think, as a basically a top baby face for the company. And while the booking has been criticized a lot, I think that there again can be no denial that he has emerged as a top babyface for this company.
Yeah, I wrote LOL next to Hangman as well.
Yeah, I mean
It
he's
worked out.
Hangman. He's Hangman. Like we like he's the main character of AEW. Blah blah blah. All that stuff.
I wanted to talk about Pac real
Yeah, yeah,
quick.
yeah.
I found it so interesting that Pac has he's been in this promotion since day one.
He's an AEW original.
And he's basically been in the same spot, like whenever he's healthy and in the country, he's been at the same spot the entire time as like upper mid card guy who can have really good matches, who like who'll be around the main event scene but not be a main eventer himself. Like he's very much been at the same level his entire run, whether it's by himself with the Death Triangle or now with the Death Riders. Which, by the way, I was watching episode 3 on. They promoted for episode 4, Pac versus Jon Moxley. Very interesting in hindsight.
I mean, yeah, Pac. I mean, when he was signed, he was coming off of, he had left WWE. He was coming off a really successful Dragon Gate run in terms of his quality of his work.
He was still in the
Um,
midst of it, if you remember, because he got pulled because something happened where he couldn't wrestle at like all out, and people thought it was because he had the drag. He didn't want to lose while he was Open the Dream Gate
mhm,
champ, but like he was gonna lose the belt before then. Like everybody
yeah,
knew he was losing it at Kobe World, so it was in the
yeah,
midst of that. But yeah,
and yeah, for a guy who has been like kind of not around for huge portions of the AW run, you're right that he is in the same spot. He's kind of like a gatekeeper kind of guy. He's protected, but he's a guy that you can kind of beat on your way to, facing the world champion, or like I think we saw like with his match against Will Ospreay. um, before Revolution, right? He kind of like got Osprey ready for his match against John Moxley. Um,
Yeah.
him and Claudio, very similar roles, I would say. Uh, they, because of their ability and their look and their athleticism, different workers, but very similar in that regard. Like they always have this level of credibility, no matter who they're wrestling. Like Pac could beat. You could watch a Pac match and be like, this guy could beat any guy on the roster if he wanted to.
Yeah,
Um,
like if they put the TNT title on him on Dynamite this week, I'd be like, okay, we'll see. Like I'm not like concerned about it or anything.
if Pac emerges as a challenger for Darby seems like he's gonna do this challenger of the week kind of thing for the world title. Like Pac versus Darby Allin, okay, makes sense. I don't think Pac's gonna win, but it's gonna be a really good match.
Yeah.
Then we have the AEW Women's World Title match, which is vacant. So this is the first ever Women's World Title match. So we have two people who, and the women's division has changed probably the most out of anything. If we're gonna look back at what was going on in 2019.
Yeah.
And so people will probably remember this is Riho winning the world title. She defeats Nyla Rose. Um, and I mean, the big criticism around AEW's women's division was that it was bad. But the real challenge was there was not a lot of talent available for various of reasons, for
Yeah.
various reasons. And so they went with, Riho, a Joshi wrestler, and Nyla Rose, who was basically a completely unknown wrestler at the time. Um, and for the first few years, they were both really key players to AEW's women's division, but subsequently, the division has more people have become available, more people have developed, and has largely passed them by. Nyla Rose hasn't wrestled in AEW in I think almost 2 years. Um, yeah,
Yeah, that sounds right.
her last match in AEW proper that was not a dark match was a she tagged with Harley Cameron in November of 2024,
Mm.
losing to Mariah May and Mina Shirakawa. She's done some dark matches. She did some stuff on like Chris Jericho's cruise last year. She's been working some indies and I think worked a lot over WrestleMania weekend, but is largely not a part of AEW's roster at this point. They are
Yeah.
in the DC area this week for Dynamite. Tony does you like to give people um, stuff in their hometowns, even if he's not really doing anything else with them. But
Well, there you go. And then Willow's doing this comeback killer thing. So, hey, look out for Nyla Rose if this episode comes out before Dynamite.
yeah, I mean will be very that's a good point that Willow is doing the thing.
Yeah.
And
Um.
Rio has been mostly working in Japan. Um, she
Yeah.
has wrestled in AW. I actually see on I don't know if she's injured because I'm seeing on Cage Match that doesn't have a match in 2026.
Mm.
Um, so it's possible that she's injured or I don't know what's going on there. She did wrestle more recently than Nyla Rose. She wrestled in November of 2025,
Yeah.
where she tagged with Alex Windsor against Mina Shirakawa and Tony Storm.
Yeah, I would say like AEW did a good job of like kind of finding like diamonds in the rough for the time they had to like build up a women's division. These two are probably as good as they could have found. Like they had Emi Sakura there too, but she was doing the very bad Freddie Mercury deal, and yeah, can't push that.
Yeah, I mean
But
it was hard. I mean, we talked about the stages of the women's division. I think the two things that are really obvious, the first are they didn't have a lot of talent available to them when the company first started,
yeah,
and over time, they aggressively pursued any, available talent. A lot of people that WWE cut ended up in AEW. Um, and then the other thing is, so I think they were really relying on like the Joshi talents to kind of stabilize the division. I think that's why Rio got the title to start, who was unknown to American viewers. Um, in with the idea being that like Riho would be a solid worker to kind of work with some of the greener, less experienced talent that AEW is trying to get ready. The pandemic happens, which makes international travel a lot more difficult. So they could have had plans for, more, Joshi talent coming in for certain shows and things like that. That never materializes. And by the time the pandemic ends, the wrestling landscape is different. They've added more talent and just it moves on. This is very much like the preliminary stages a of AEW's women's division. And I think it's grown a ton since then and has done overall a pretty good job, I think, given the resources that they had at the time.
Yeah, I agree. I think they both worked out, and I think if you need to pull them out of mothballs to give somebody a challenger of the month, you could do that just fine and get
Yeah.
by.
Um, then we got the main event, which is kind of really just like a reason to kind of launch the inner circle angle. So we have Chris Jericho, Ortiz and Santana against the Elite, which is Kenny Omega, Matt, Nick Jackson. I don't think we need to really talk about the Elite that much. Again, they're
Yeah,
pretty well covered. I think
I didn't even write them
yeah,
down.
the Elite guys. Ortiz and Santana though,
Yeah.
kind of brought in as a established tag team that could feud with the Young Bucks and the other tag team, a real cornerstone for the tag team division. And they get a really plum job in terms of debuting in this with alongside Chris Jericho and Jericho kind of using them as part of the inner circle and much like Sammy kind of getting all this rub by being in Jericho's orbit and working these multi-man matches and all this kind of stuff. But
Sorry.
um it ends really with um the injury to it was Santana who got hurt, right, in the blood and guts match.
Yes, blew out his knee, I
Yeah.
believe.
So Santana blows out his knee. One of the weaknesses Tony Khan has is that when something happens like injury, like especially if you're in a tag team, you can often get put on ice. That kind of happens to Ortiz. And then Santana is like, I don't want to be in this tag team anymore. I want to be a single star. And eventually ends up leaving the company to go to Impact, where he does get a singles push. Um, he's presumably much happier there. But these guys never win the tag team titles. And I think they were at one time one of the best tag teams in wrestling. They had some really good matches. Obviously, working with the Young Bucks a lot helps. But these guys were good wrestlers. They had, I think, charisma, especially Ortiz. They had authentic attitude towards them. They just felt like two tough, New Yorican kind of guys. Um, and it just never really fully clicked, largely due to injury and kind of, I don't know, their relationship kind of falling apart behind the scenes or whatever, but whatever caused Santana to split up the team and leave the company. And Ortiz is still in AEW, but he's just kind of like Eddie Kingston's side guy, and there's not that much going on with him.
Yeah, I did love these guys when they were the kind of the new LAX in the
Yep.
Don Callis era Impact Wrestling, and that's kind of where like their buzz peaked, and then they hopped into AEW at the right time. They were in the right spot alongside Chris Jericho, and just for whatever reason, they never like tried with them as tag champs. They never really were in that like mix for the tag titles because you had the Bucks, you had FTR, you know. Well, not like FTR was a little later on, but
Mhm.
they were still in when Santana and Ortiz were there. The Lucha Brothers, I meant to say, they're
Yeah, the
just
Lucha Brothers, you got SoCal SCUs,
yeah,
were there. You did like things like the Kenny and Hangman tag team early on.
right, right.
Um, so yeah, it never clicked for them. Do you remember? You just watched the episode, so you probably do. But do you remember their original tag team name in AEW?
Well, I actually don't think they were ever called this, but they were proud and powerful, I
Yeah,
believe.
and they had great intro music.
Yes,
If
they
I
did.
wasn't proud, then I wouldn't be powerful.
Buh, buh,
Um,
buh, buh. Yeah,
and
good
then
stuff. I don't know. They just never reached those heights because the tag titles were Tony was using the tag titles for a lot of stuff. Like the SCU run was to kind of set up Scorpio Sky. The
we'll talk
then
about Scorpio.
Oh, we will. The Kenny and Hangman stuff was obviously to set them up. You get the pandemic, then you get the FTR coming in. You're obviously going to do stuff with them, and then the Bucks finally get their run. So there was a lot of time where it was like they just weren't in the mix because there was other stuff they were trying to accomplish with the tag titles. I think if AEW kicks off and they have trios titles from day one, this may be a different story because then you get, Santana Ortiz and, maybe Sammy, maybe you throw Hager there. Like something happens where they can do stuff with that belt as well. But they just never really got the chance to be that team. And then I think Santana saw the writing on the wall and was like, yeah, let me see if I could do something because Ortiz is kind of cool getting the check. I want to be something and I want to try. And I want to try while I can. And
Mhm.
I commend
Yeah,
him for that.
yeah, absolutely nothing wrong with that. The other guy in this match is a guy named Chris Jericho. I think we all know Jericho's history in AEW. Instrumental figure, beginning of the company, the most famous person in the company, huge TV star, Attitude Era star, for what that's worth.
WCW guy from back when
Yep.
wrestling was on TNT, which I love Tony Schiavone acting as like a TNT liaison for pro wrestling.
Yeah. But I mean, there's obviously a lot of criticisms of Jericho's time in AEW, but there's no denying that at the beginning stages of the company, he was arguably the most important individual star. Um, in like was I think definitely like the MVP of AEW for the first like year of the company existing.
Yeah, I would agree, and I would say, Mox probably overtook him because Mox interfered in this match. This is the famous spot where he puts Kenny through a glass table in a quote unquote VIP area. But yeah,
Also, Jake Hagar makes his debut at the end of this
yes,
match.
he was the big surprise. Uh, I I think I heard once that this was supposed to be the Good Brothers, but then they got a big deal from WWE and were like, "Yeah, we'll stay here."
That's fine. I honestly, as bad as uninteresting as Hagar was, I prefer him over the Good Brothers.
Well, look, Hager did have that very cool like MMA match with Wardlow
Hell yeah, he
with
did.
with the shoot Hurricane Rana.
So awesome.
God, I gotta watch that back. I think I missed that Dynamite live. I
Yeah,
gotta
they did
watch
like a
that
weird like
back.
Lion's Den match, didn't they?
Yeah. All right. You want to move on
Um,
to episode two?
we got to talk about
Of
Hagar. He was in the news
Right.
recently. He is no longer in AEW. And he didn't seem happy about that because he was on Dana White's Power Slap over WrestleMania weekend, where he, after winning his original, I don't know if they have matches, fights, I don't know what you call it, Power Slap engagements are, but he did make time to go into the camera and say "fuck you, Tony Khan." So, not sure what Tony Khan did to Jake Hagar other than pay him a lot of money for several years of mediocre work, but uh, that's just part of the gig with Tony and these wrestlers. They don't always respect him after the fact or before the fact.
He had a world title match with Mox that JR put over to the moon that I don't remember being very good.
That was like an empty arena match
Well,
during like the
yeah, during the
pandemic. I
pandemic.
remember that.
Also, this is kind of going to interrupt things. We've got WWE releases happening.
Oh, we do?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Nikki,
jeez.
I'm scrolling through the Slack right now. This is
Yeah.
old news by the time people hear this, but
Yeah.
Nikki Cross, Alba
Okay.
Fire. Ooh, let's get Kaylee Ray in AEW. Who else we got? Joe Gacy. They're cutting a lot of the Wyatt Six. Looking for more. Andre Chase was still there. Well, not anymore. And
Not Harlem Bravado. The end of Harlem
yes,
Bravado.
I
Uh,
can't believe it.
it's
One
time
of
in WWE.
one of the most inexplicable runs. Like that guy was an over part of like NXT 2.0.
Yeah.
It's like
Good
how
for
did
him.
that
Good for
happen?
him.
There you go. But let's hop back on as that story
As
develops.
we just see some NXT it sounds like they're cutting some of the longer tenured NXT people and some of the NXT UK hangers on that have been hanging around for a while.
Yes, but
Um,
I want to go on record. Let's get Kaylee Ray in AEW.
I didn't know who Alpafire was when you said her name.
Yes, that was Kaylee Ray.
The second AEW show, sorry, the first AEW show I was in attendance for. Um, the
Yes,
show had,
episode 2 from
yeah,
Boston.
yeah,
I was
starts with
wondering.
the Inner Circle kind of debuting, and with a promo, and then we have the famous first round of the World Title Tag Title Tournament, Private Party defeating the Young Bucks in what seems likely to be the Private Party's highlight of their career. I know they subsequently have won the tag title since, but this is a far more significant match in terms of what people will remember when they think about Mark Quinn and Isaiah Cassidy.
Yeah, they had to rerun this match to get Private Party hot again 5 years later. So I don't know if that worked out. Like, Private Party to me, like, I've always been a guy who's been like, can Top Flight get the opportunities that those two get? I mean, Top Flight's not really great at promoing, but neither is Private Party. And I don't know. I find Top Flight a little more impressive than Private Party, but
Yeah, Private
yeah.
Party's been undone by a lack of development and then
A
also a lot of injuries, particularly Mark Quinn. Seems like he's hurt now. It seems like he's just constantly injured.
Yeah.
Um,
I wanted to say one thing just off topic. They changed the Bucks music on HBO Max. I don't know why.
so what is the music?
It's like some kind of sound alike to the Super Kick Party song.
Okay, so it's not the secession theme.
No, no,
It's
no,
just
way before
random
that.
other music.
Yeah.
Did they lose the rights to Super Kick Party?
They're still using Super Kick Party. I don't know how that works.
I was gonna say their dad wrote the song, so
Yes,
it'd be
I don't
weird.
find that I don't understand how that works,
I will
but
say I've always enjoyed Isaiah Cassidy. I think in every match he was in, he took a ton of bumps and worked really hard. And I thought he came across as kind of authentic as like this young Brooklyn guy. Um, and I don't know if he has like a real ceiling in pro wrestling, but I think he's always been a competent professional whose work I've enjoyed in the way that you enjoy, um, an undercard tag team wrestler.
yeah, he tries hard, and I think that that effort is why Tony wants to keep giving Private Party shots. Like they
Well,
both, both that they're day one guys, and both that they're trying stuff. They're trying to improve and get better in the Private Party trappings, but yeah, I don't really see it. Like they got in like really good shape during their last hiatus, and unfortunately now, as you brought up, Mark Quinn's back on the shelf. So
so of course, God forbid we ever see Isaiah Cassidy without Mark Quinn. Like he couldn't.
I think I saw him cut a promo on Collision, so he might be in like the Collision like mix for a little
Oh,
bit. I don't know.
yeah, I hope so. Um,
Yeah.
then we have Darby Allin, who we've already discussed ad nauseum, and then we have Jimmy Havoc. And so Darby beats Jimmy Havoc the number one contender match for the AW World Title. So
Gulp.
that that as we talked about, yeah. So Jimmy Havoc is no longer in AEW. To my knowledge, no hasn't wrestled in about 5 or 6 years. Is So his career is basically over for. Do you want to tell the people why Jimmy Havoc's career is over?
Well, there was a little thing called Speaking Out, and his name came up uh in several conversations, and
Yeah.
yeah, we can
If I
kind of just leave
recall,
it there.
I mean, if I recall correctly, didn't he already get in trouble in AEW because I think he had like a substance abuse problem and he had to go to rehab.
All
Um,
I remember is that Excalibur like knocked him out at a post show thing once.
I was gonna say, I believe there was a um like a post-match party or whatever where they were drinking and Excalibur uh gave him a two-piece.
Yes. Excalibur reminded him that he's from Detroit. Yeah.
I think
Uh,
did Jimmy Havoc post a picture beforehand of Excalibur unmasked on social media too?
I don't remember that.
I
I
kind of
also don't remember what Excalibur looks like. So, if he did, I didn't see it or I didn't log it to
Yeah.
memory.
But I think it's also important to illustrate like there wasn't a huge difference, I think, at the time of AEW between Darby Allin and Jimmy Havoc in terms of like their status as like individual stars.
Yeah, like I was very surprised they let these two work just a straight match. Like this didn't like devolve into like plunder or anything. These two just worked a TV match and Darby won and it was pretty evenly leveled and Jimmy ended up in a tag team with Kip Sabian and then he was not in the wrestling business anymore.
Yeah, I think it's I always found him to be kind of a weird signing because he was kind of like this death match guy, and like a lot of his matches were just plunder matches. He didn't just someone that didn't fit like weekly television wrestling, I think.
Yeah, like he felt like a buzz signing. Like he's a guy with buzz in the UK. He was big in Progress. So let's give him a shot. And they
Mhm.
found a role for him, like they found a role for Joey Janela, but then those didn't work out for very different reasons. Joey Janela just ended up going back to the Indies.
Joey
You,
Janela on this show after Dynamite ends, they have the first ever, I think, episode of AEW Dark. Maybe it was the second one. And Kenny Omega and Joey Janela have the first lights out match in AEW history, I think, and it's like a 4.5 star match.
yeah, man.
And it was on AEW Dark. And we saw it. I saw it live after this show ended. It was crazy.
I miss the old Dark. Like I know they can't bring it back because like Turner has exclusivity, but like put it on like the TBS YouTube or something. Like that
Yeah.
could work, or put it on HBO Max as like an exclusive or something.
They're
Like,
running dark matches on these Dynamite tapings.
well, yeah, but it's all Colt Cabana and Satnam Singh.
But they are running them. I mean, that's they have to they're running the matches.
Yeah,
Uh
yeah.
Women's tag team match. Dr. Britt Baker and Riho defeat Bea Priestley and Emi Sakura. Britt Baker had a very brief return to AEW in 2024, where she wrestles like 5 matches and then splits again. Has not been seen since November of 2024.
Well,
Um,
I saw her last night at the NFL draft. A ton. She they were in Pittsburgh for the draft and she was just in the crowd and the camera sees a pretty brunette woman and they put the camera on
just
her.
like was Kevin Dunn doing the camera work? Because wasn't she at like a Adam Cole match in NXT or something at one
Oh
point?
yeah, she was.
Yeah, and they just like centered on
Yeah.
her.
They didn't even I wouldn't think they knew that was Adam's girlfriend, but hey.
Um, there's a lot of rumors and stuff. I don't really want to get into all that. I think that, but when, the history of AEW is written, Britt Baker was their first legitimate female wrestling star, somebody that the company built the division around. Over time, I think, like we talked about with Rio and Nyla Rose, more people get added to the mix, other people get over, kind of passed her by to a degree, but was a extremely important part of the women's division in the first few years of AEW. Um, she's still a babyface at this point, but she eventually turns heel, and that kind of launches her career
Yeah.
um, in AEW. Uh, I have always enjoyed her. Um, I would like seeing her again in AEW at some point. Um, great intro, great music, great intro. Um, Happy just being a dentist. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with her.
Yeah, there's a lot of like noise around Brit, which is weird, but if she were to come back, I think she'd have a lot of credibility because of this opening like 3 years where she was, of the biggest women's name in the company. And I think if she came back now, she'd be, he would be somebody that's like in the mix, but you don't push.
Yeah, I mean,
I think you could use her to get other people over.
there's just a lot more traffic in the women's division too because you have the TBS title, you have the women's title, and then you have these tag team titles that
Yes.
um they seem to be, I don't know if they're taking them like super, super seriously, but they're putting together tag teams and they've got all these teams and they're putting people together and they're using um the roster. We just saw Hikaru Shida come back and looks like her and Chris Statlander are a team going forward. So they're doing stuff with a lot of different women on their roster. And I think
And
there's totally a space for her if whatever happens, happens.
I think if you wanted to get her back in the mix, having her be like the talker and someone else be the worker would be like a really good way to get her and like get her back in the mix and get maybe some better matches than you would get out of Brit as a singles at this point. And then, you use her best asset which is her talking, and then you get, that'd be something that I think could work and at this stage in AEW's women's division would probably be the best use for her, but I don't really know if that's going to be the case given how she kind of dips in, dips out. I think the last time we saw her was they were setting up the feud with Serena Deeb and she just to the camera said, "Nobody cares about this." And then the whole thing just got dropped. So I don't know how that's going to work if she were to come back, but I do think there is a role if he were to. So,
Mhm. Um, Bea Priestley, one of her
oh,
9 matches
yeah.
she worked in total in AEW, gets signed by WWE, and started doing a lot of stuff with. Well, she was doing a lot of stuff with Stardom, and then she gets signed by WWE. Um, is now back in Stardom, uh, after getting released by WWE in 2024. Still only 30 years old. Still good enough to meet the working standard of the women's division, I think. Former longtime girlfriend of Will Ospreay. I don't know if there's like a personal issue there or anything that might be preventing her, but wouldn't be someone I'm against seeing again in AEW.
Yeah, B. Yeah, she took a lot of pelters. She was a COVID kind of departure because like
Yeah.
they couldn't bring her in, and that was it. So I don't. She's not somebody I would blame for like jumping when she did because she needed to work.
Yep. And she went
But
to NXT UK.
I mean, he'd she'd be a body in the division, but I don't really see any like kind of high ceiling for B Priestley in AEW in 2026, but I wouldn't be mad if they brought her in as just some depth. So,
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah.
that's where I would see her too. Um, then we have John Moxley and Shawn Spears. Shawn Spears was a important part of AEW at the beginning, obviously,
Man, was he.
and he was the first person kind of in the Cody vortex.
Yes, cuz he
I
comes
guess
in.
I guess you could make the case it was actually Dustin.
Well, he was going to be in it cuz they're brothers, but Sean was the first guy where it was like, okay, he's here to work with Cody and Cody's going to try and get something out of him, and well, he's Sean Spears, so it didn't work. It's like he goes into the ring here with John Moxley, one of the hottest acts on the planet. He's having his New Japan run. He's in the wrestling gear, which I didn't remember. Like this, as I digress from talking about Sean Spears, this presentation of Mox is like very like beta version Mox. Like he just comes out from the ramp with this just, you know, generic rock music. And it's like, oh yeah, it's Mox. I don't remember this at all. But, Sean Spears goes in the ring with him, has the same 2-star match he always has, and takes a weak paradigm shift.
Yeah, Sean's one of those guys that gets cut from WWE when he was kind of like over with the, especially the NXT crowd, with a very specific WWE style gimmick. Um, is friends with guys in AEW, and this is a peak time where guys who were friends with guys in AEW can get jobs. Um, and then he's pretty much after the first year like phased down. When I think about Sean Spears in AEW, I think of him hitting Cody with his chair in his turn.
Yes.
And then there was one of those like Anarchy in the Arena matches or something, or maybe it was one of the Stadium Stampede matches, but like he like fights somebody in a room that was just nothing but like folding chairs. Like it was like all the
Oh, I
folding
was
chairs.
there. That was Stadium Stampede 2. That was Double or Nothing 2021
Yeah. And
with
it's like a room that was just like all of the stored folding chairs or
the Inner
something.
Circle and the Pinnacle. Yes. And he was in the room, and I think who was it with him? Probably Sammy or something. And they did like a thing, and there was like a spotlight on him with the chair. Speaking of, very good entrance for Sean Spears. He looked the business.
Yeah, and he's he's back in NXT. He's back in NXT as kind of like I think he's like a player coach working with some of those NXT trainees on the Largo loop. So good for him.
I will say this: I'll put over Sean Spears. The one thing he did in AEW that I liked was when the Wardlow MJF feud was going on, and MJF was like using Sean Spears as like Wardlow's, I think it was like accountability buddy,
Yeah.
and he was like kind of the go between. I thought Sean Spears was really good in that role, and
Yeah,
then
like
he,
Sean is the annoying supervisor that you're way more qualified for, that your obnoxious
yes,
boss has put in charge of you.
yes, and I just thought that was the best thing I've seen Sean Spears involved in. So, I bury the guy a lot, but I will bring up the one thing he did that I liked. And it was in AEW. So there you go.
And then our main event was Jericho and Sammy Guevara against Hangman and Dustin Rhodes. So this is Dustin Rhodes' Dynamite debut. And he's still in the company. He seems like someone that's always kind of threatening to go back to WWE because of Cody and all that kind of stuff, but he has been. Um, I don't really know what his official role is in AEW. I guess he's some kind of coach.
Probably
Um,
player coach. I mean, he was like a double champ in AEW, in ROH for a little bit. Was he a triple champion with the TNT title? I think he was, because he didn't give up the ROH belt until he got hurt. He was a triple champion last year.
yeah,
That's
so why would he
awesome.
leave? He's getting a push.
I will say, Dustin's been a guy that's been around and kind of just in the role where it's like, hey, we need Dustin to cut a good like minute long promo for this match he's gonna have. There we go. But I think that TNT title like emergency run when Adam Cole went down, there was criticism about that because it was Kyle Fletcher's moment, but I think that was booked perfectly. It's booked exactly how I would have done it. Like you bring
Yeah.
people up from that scary moment with Cole with like the big kind of like culminating story for Dustin that he finally wins a belt in this last run, and then you give him one token defense, and then he gets bloodied up and beaten by Kyle Fletcher, and we haven't seen him since. So I think credit to them for that. As far as his standing in the company goes, pretty much same spot. The legend that has a lot of credibility that puts over the new guys.
Mhm.
So yeah.
And the this match, this show goes off the air with Darby Allin giving a hurricanrana while riding a skateboard to Chris Jericho. It was really awesome.
Sick. It was so cool to see Darby like stand tall on episode 2 of Dynamite.
Yeah, he
Very
confronts
cool.
Jericho. He goes down the ramp on the skateboard, and then he jumps off and hits a hurricanrana. It was sick.
You hear Jericho like beating somebody up on the floor, and he's just shouting, send him!" Like, I'm ready.
um, Episode 3. So we start off with the tag team tournament again. We see SCU, who eventually wins this tournament. They defeat the best friends, Chuck Taylor and Trent. Um, Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky. This is the pinnacle of Scorpio Sky's career. Really, was him being an SCU. Um, they were kind of like because the Young Bucks lost in the first round, and they were the obvious choice to be the first tag team champions. SCU kind of gets that rub as the first tag team champions in history.
Yeah.
They were over at the time. The crowd loved the worst town I've ever been in gimmick. I also loved it. It was a funny bit.
Good little bit. Yeah.
And this does begin our Tony's long-term fascination with pushing Scorpio Sky, who is a fine fine, capable pro wrestler who, despite being on the indies during like the peak of the indie time period, never really did that much on the indies, was never a standout talent, but has kind of constantly been getting at least some television time. I think what happens to him now is kind of overblown. Like he's really like lower fodder on the roster. But there was a time where Scorpio Sky was a very push commodity in this company.
It was Tony's first like swing. Like he used this tournament to get Scorpio over because the Lucha Brothers jumped them before they lay out Daniels. And so Scorpio's like he wasn't supposed to be in the tournament. So he just pops in like
Mhm.
wearing his sneakers, taping himself up with like the wrist tape from like the trainer's bag, which I thought was a good touch. And he wins the match and they go on to win the tournament and he ends up getting a title shot against Jericho on like I think it was like Thanksgiving Eve or something.
Mhm.
So like they gave him like a really legit chance. And I think part of the like early criticism of it like the AEW roster was like there wasn't a lot of like there weren't a lot of like I think black people I think it
Yeah,
was.
thanks for bringing it up, Sue, because I wanted to bring it up, and it's just way better optically if you bring it up.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that
So
was definitely part of it. I think they wanted to push a black male wrestler, and Scorpio Sky was kind of the only one. Kind of similar to the women's division, where there wasn't, the black version of Chris Jericho or the black version of Kenny Omega available to kind of push as a legit main eventer, so they had to try to elevate somebody
yeah.
um, into that spot, and they went with Scorpio Sky.
Yeah, and I don't think the private party thing was also that. I do think it might have been part of it, but I think it was more kind of like giving a shock finish and the Bucks wanting,
Yeah.
wanting to put somebody over
Yeah, the
to
elite
like
wanted to do a bunch of jobs in the beginning. Yeah, I
right.
don't I totally agree, and I think part of it was, yeah, well, let's do a squash and let's try to give some juice to these young guys that most people have never heard of before.
Yeah, and then as far as the Scorpio thing goes, it was an attempt. Like they gave it the gusto. They built this tag tournament around him. They set it up after Jericho won the title because he's cutting that promo in the back where the a little bit of the bubbly comes from. Earlier in that promo, he's going through the locker room just browbeating guys, and he looks at Scorpio Sky and goes, "Scorpio Sky, you'll never be world champion." And then, they go through the beginning of like 2 months of Dynamite and they build up to a Scorpio Sky title match. So I thought that was cool. As far as Scorpio goes, he just was never the promo, never the personality. A good enough wrestler to like have around, but not a guy you push. I think the Skyflight thing he's doing now, kind of like a lower card, you know, lower card act that gets in there on Collision is probably his best usage. The TNT title runs were fine, but yeah, it was a sign of the roster at the time that they were given a shot to Scorpio.
Yeah.
So
And the best friends, of course. This is really the big thing about the best friends is that like the best friends is really like the introduction of Orange Cassidy
yeah,
as a character, where he is kind of basically like a mascot for the best friends at the very start of this company. And then eventually the best friends just become like Orange Cassidy's like sidekicks, basically.
it's Orange Cassidy and the best friends instead of the best friends and Orange Cassidy.
Yeah.
His name's on the marquee.
Mhm. Um, so Chuck Taylor, who had a few years in the company and then appears to be retired for real.
Yeah, I
Um,
think so. He went out with that match with Trent.
yeah, and he
So there you
said,
go.
his career is over. That's the storyline, is that his career is over, and he's even done angles where like I think what's the angle I think is like ankle is just supposed to be like broken into a million pieces because then they Pillmanize it later.
Yeah, like I think Trent hit it with like a wrench or something against like a car window or something. Yeah.
And so and he still works for AEW as an agent, I think. And Trent is also still in AEW. He's kind of reformed Roppongi Vice with Rocky and is like a job guy, a pin eater. I shouldn't say job guy, a pin eater for Don Callis faction.
Yeah, Trent. It's very interesting how his career went because when he signed with AEW, New Japan was like about to give him like a singles push. It
Hmm.
was either him or they were giving him a singles push. He moved up to heavyweight. There
Yep.
was that angle where like Chuck Taylor was losing his mind and hitting people with chairs. Remember when Chuck Taylor was in New Japan?
It
How
was great.
about that?
As a huge Chuck Taylor fan, I certainly remember it and enjoy it greatly.
What a run. But yeah, he was they were gonna try it with him, and then he signs with AEW. He goes back into the tag team, and he ends up kind of behind Orange Cassidy because Orange gets over. They one of AEW's best one of the best things they've done was tweak Orange Cassidy's gimmick just a little bit, and all it was Chuck Taylor saying he was doing the promo for the Pac match, and Chuck Taylor just said at Revolution he's gonna try, and then all of a sudden everything with Orange Cassidy made sense from like a TV wrestling perspective. It's
This
like,
time he's
oh
gonna try. And I think
yeah,
Trent says, like, well, he hasn't told us he's gonna try. We just think he's going
yeah,
to.
like it's such a perfect oh, he just hasn't been trying. So now he's going to try and we're going to see it. And now Orange Cassidy is Orange
Well,
Cassidy.
the story goes that Tony didn't even know he was a real worker.
Oh, how about that? He didn't know he was the fire ant.
No, because they were trying to sell like I think it was the Bucks or someone. The Bucks were trying to sell him on bringing in Orange Cassidy, and Tony's like, I don't know, isn't okay. He can't really work though. And then Nick Jackson, Matt Jackson's like, oh no, he was Fire Ant. And then Tony was like, what? He was Fire Ant? Oh, that guy's a great wrestler. And then
I I think we've gotten to the point where I think we have to explain the ants. Like I think we have to explain both the ants and the shoot trash jokes cuz Chikara was so long ago.
um
I mean, I don't think we need to right
no.
now, but that's just a
No.
thing we can do in
Yeah,
the
yeah, that's what I
future.
want to do. An hour and 50 minutes of this podcast is begin Chikara lore
Uh,
discussion.
there were wrestling ants, and they were all like pretty good workers.
Yes. Well,
There
Chuck
you
Taylor was
go.
also Mr. Azerbaijan.
Wasn't he the tree man too? The tree guy.
I don't think he was the tree guy. You're thinking of like I know who you're talking about. He was like part of that group.
Yeah.
But he was no, he was Mr. Azerbaijan.
There you go.
Um, three-time winner of Mr. Azerbaijan's most handsome man. Believe that one year he would have won it again, but it was canceled due to a coal miner strike. Uh,
Mm.
that was all in his introduction. Then we had the Inner Circle versus the uh, not part of the Dark Order yet, Alex Reynolds and John Silver. They're just on here as Alex Reynolds and John Silver. I don't know. Were they called the Beaver Boys? Did you see this?
I skipped the main event of episode 3,
Wow.
but
So you didn't watch this 2-minute squash match?
look, I saw it as I was scanning through on the HBO Max, but yeah, I mean they brought those guys in, and I think there's still work there,
They
right?
are still in AEW.
How about that?
John Silver hasn't worked a match in 2025 or 2026, so I don't know. He might be injured because Alex Reynolds has been around. He's been working Ring of Honor tapings, been tagging with Evil Uno. It looks like for Ring of Honor, so he's still around doing stuff. I assume John Silver's got to be injured. Probably like tore his pectoral muscle or something. It sounds like something that would happen to John Silver.
Probably
Brief period of time, John Silver, very over in AEW. His career is really about to take off, shortly after this happened.
Johnny
Unfortunate,
Hungee.
unfortunate that his peak kind of took place during the empty crowd era.
Yeah, but then he had the run with Hangman where he was kind of like the face of them running around with Hangman.
Yeah,
So there you go.
I enjoyed the John Silver era.
It was fine. Them with Hangman, I did like that, a lower card act working with a main eventer to. I like that kind of like intermingling on the roster.
Hmm. We have the women's world title match, Riho and Britt Baker. We've already talked about them. And then we have another tag team match. So we have the Lucha Brothers defeat Jurassic Express. So these are like the last four guys that we're going to talk about here because um after this there's Paige and Kenny Omega versus Moxley and Pac match, and then Jericho and Darby Allin. So we already kind of talked about all those guys. So we're going to focus
Yeah.
on these four guys to kind of wrap it up here. Penta and Ray Phoenix. Ray Phoenix, of course, was late. This is before Ray Phoenix was placed in prison in AEW.
Yeah.
This is when he was a guy on the
His
roster.
inhumane treatment.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's very strange that So well, I guess we'll start with Penta. I think when the company first started, there was an idea that Penta was going to be a big single star. Do you remember at the original All In, he has one of the prime spots, which is he wrestles a singles match against Kenny Omega.
Yes.
And he had kind of emerged as like more or less a standout star from Lucha Underground and was one of the top stars in the indies and was charismatic. And while his career in AEW is still pretty memorable because of the tag team work, he never really got that singles push that people expected him to get.
Yeah, it was really the last like frontier for the Lucha Brothers cuz you know, Penta was that top guy in Lucha Underground, and Lucha Underground kind of missed the peak on him. And then Phoenix was a really good worker. He had that accidental international title run, but they never really went with them as singles. But like outside of that, like if their intention was never to push him as singles, then I think they did everything you could do with the Lucha Brothers in AEW, and it was
Hmm.
when they left, it was time because they had the tag titles, they ran with the trios titles, and that was about it. You know, and at the time they left, they didn't really need to push Penta and Phoenix
Yeah,
as singles guys. They
they
could
had
just move on.
they had other talent that was fresher than those
Yeah.
guys. But Penta had been kind of relegated. Like I still think there's a time where Penta was pushed harder as a single star early in AEW's timeline, um, when there was a star power vacuum. So we saw guys like Scorpio Sky get pushed. I think if Penta was given some of that with his talent level and his charisma, would have been able to maybe do more than he ultimately ended up doing. And Ray Phoenix, I mean. This is during a period of time where Ray Phoenix is probably one of the best, most consistent wrestlers in the world.
Yeah, he
And
had one of his biggest matches was he wrestled Kenny Omega on January 6th, 2021, a date that is only remembered for that match.
yeah, I mean, he has a ton of great. He has that great match with Nick Jackson. It was like Nick Jackson's first singles match
Oh,
in like six
yes.
years.
It's the match that got everybody like that started the meme of Nick Jackson winning the TNT title.
Yeah. And then we have Jurassic Express, Jungle Boy, and Marco Stunt. Um, Marco Stunt would not last long in this company. Um, do you remember what was Marco Stunt's undoing in AEW?
Um, wasn't it something with like there was some I think with like Priscilla Kelly and like there was like a sex toy in a match or something.
Yes, he did a spot with a
Oh,
sex toy on a GCW show.
well, there you go. At least he got did he get thrown through the ceiling by Lance Archer or was that a
No, he
different
does. That's
spot?
some random jobber, but it is in the same. I don't know if it's the same episode, but I was gonna say Marco Stunt's biggest contribution in AEW history was the unbelievable squash match he had with Lance Archer.
Yes, it's in the factory. It's one of those early pandemic episodes.
Yes, where they're building Lance Archer up to face Cody in the TNT title, tournament finals. And yes, there's the memorable segment where Lance Archer's just like beating up random people in the back, and he uh lifts up a guy and puts him through the ceiling. That's literally what happened. The guy's body goes through the ceiling. Um, and then he also choke slams a guy into a garbage can. Not like the garbage can is on its side and he choke slams him and like the garbage can decompresses. Like he choke slams him and somehow fits the human's body inside a actual garbage can.
Oh, Lance Archer. That Lance Archer run at the start was so awesome.
Lance
And I
Archer's like
still
one of the
love
best, like
Lance
three or four
Archer.
best squash match workers ever. It's like him and
And
Sid in the Road Warriors.
and yes, go out of your way to watch that Lance Archer Marco stunt squash. It's incredible. Like it
Picks up Marco Stunt, throws him into like the crowd of jobbers that are there at the empty wrestling factory.
it what was the tweet? It made some people deeply
Deep,
uncomfortable,
yeah, there
was
was
it?
someone I forget who they were, but they were like, "This is just exactly what WWE would do," like without really understanding. Like this is like Marco is doing a great job at his specific job, which is doing this job.
That is Pro Wrestling 101. The big guy squashes the small one.
And Jack Perry, still in the company, one of the four pillars. I think, along with Sammy Guevara, one of the people that was really undermined by being given that label. And a lot of kind of what can be applied to Sammy can be applied to Jack Perry too. I think he was viewed as a potential prospect due to his age, and other people just kept getting signed that were better prospects than him. Uh, unlike Sammy, he's still around on AEW's main roster and is still doing stuff.
The current national champion. I should have asked you which belt he had before I said it.
I don't know. Yeah,
I
so he
just
has.
said it. He's the national
No,
champion.
I know now that you said it, but
Yeah.
if you asked me that, I would have been like, he's got the title you can defend in different places, which probably isn't good for AEW's like title definitions that I can't name that. But look out, Jack Perry's had a lot of good matches in this company. I actually really enjoyed Jack Perry and Luchasaurus's original like run as Jurassic Express when they won the tag team championships. I
Oh
thought they had a
yeah.
bunch of fun matches. That's a fun tag team with, Jack Perry doing a lot of the selling and the whole Ricky Morton thing, and then Luchasaurus underrated, like incredible hot tag guy. Um, he's just someone that's been snake bit by injuries. Um, but yeah, I mean, Tony really, really likes Jack Perry. Um, he had a famous pseudo feud with CM Punk um,
Yes.
that was never really that addressed on air, but was also kind of addressed on air, I guess. Um, Glass Crimey River is one of the all-time AEW moments. I don't care. Uh,
It's a great line.
there's
That's just a great line.
well, do you remember? Do people need to remember the circumstances leading up to him saying that?
I mean, yeah, I can give them to you. It was like there was some angle that Jack was gonna do with Hook that was gonna write him off for a week. That a week that he had approved. Punk didn't want them doing that on Collision, and was like, "Take that to Dynamite. We don't do that over here." Because this was during Punk's
Yeah,
reign as like the
Punk's
doorman of
insane run where he was feuding with like 10,000 different people and cutting
yes,
these promos against all these people that wanted nothing to do with him.
12 feuds at once, and only like two of them were people who would talk to him.
And people,
But
people at the time, a lot of people you and I both like said that was good. They enjoyed the Punk collisions and they were like completely out of control.
I liked them to a point, but there's like only so many times you can run a 45-minute six-man tag where Punk gasses out halfway through and be happy with it. Like, come on, guys, let's mix it up a little bit here.
So, so this is the whole backstory for this. So this story comes out that Hangman Page had driven from his home to an AEW taping in like Charlotte, North Carolina. And it was a collision taping because he was going to do a tape a segment or something. And he showed up, and CM Punk says, "Yeah, that guy can't be here because he's part of the feud with CM Punk and the Young Bucks and all that shit."
DM Punk,
Yeah.
Doorman Punk,
So
as it
that
were.
so that ends up so that story gets out there, right? And then Punk's getting all this press for allegedly banning Hangman Page from the building, and it's all this backstage news gossip. And then a few days later, through the punk friendly news outlets, we get a story where Jack Perry and Hook were going to do a backstage spot, and Jack Perry was in. I think Jack Perry was standing on a ladder, allegedly, according to the CM Punk side of things, was standing on a ladder and was going to do a spot that involved real glass. And wizened, old, always caring about the young guys, CM Punk stepped in and said, "Hey, listen, Jack, you know, y you shouldn't be doing this. It's too dangerous to do it in do real glass." And then Jack Perry was like reportedly like throwing a hissy fit backstage. And I bring all this up because I think it's very obvious that CM Punk needed to get a PR win out there as opposed to him getting shamed for keeping Hangman Page from attending the company he works for. And so Punk leaks this out where Jungle Boy is just kind of collateral damage, where it's like, oh, we had to make CM Punk look like he's a backstage leader by dealing with an unreasonable younger wrestler that was trying to do something too dangerous. So Perry
So
finds himself,
in a word, Jack Perry was used as a scapegoat.
yes, he was sued. He 100% was. And his name, he sees his name getting dragged because he's somehow now in this vortex of CM Punk versus the people that don't like CM Punk. And that leads to the whole spot with him and Hook and the limo at the pre-show for All In Wembley Stadium, where Jack Perry says right in the camera, real glass, cry me a river. But that I think people forget like that's the whole build up, and a lot of it has to do with
God.
CM Punk needing to get a PR win out and leaking that out to his camp, so that people would see him as this reasonable, calm guy, as opposed to Jack Perry as this unruly spot monkey that doesn't understand the business.
I'm so glad that Punk is in WWE and we don't have to have his just manic episodes. I
It was
this
okay for a
was
little while. It was okay
this
when he
was
was in
so
AEW for a little
this
bit.
was so exhausting to deal with. Like every day there would be something where camps are talking to some people and camps are talking to others
The
and you're
split
getting
roster on Collision to
reports.
the people Punk that was okay, people that were okay working with Punk, and then like,
Oh Jesus. There were like 9 people by the end.
and he could never stay healthy.
Oh, look, I still think there's something in Jack Perry to get back there. I still have I famously still have my Jack Perry stocks. Um I think the scapegoat run helped him cuz it he got more comfortable on the mic.
Hmm.
His matches are really really good. Like he is still and like he's a babyface wrestler. Like he had to turn heel to kind of like grow up a little bit, but he's a babyface wrestler.
Hmm.
That's his position of best use.
Yep, the crowd likes his entrance, and
They
he is a guy that can go out there. I mean, he's a become, I think, a really good in-ring worker. He's a very good tag team wrestler.
I think he's been a really good in-ring worker as a singles though cuz I
Yeah.
remember the first match of the pandemic where I thought okay, we're gonna be okay. Was Jungle Boy versus MJF the first double or
Yeah, it
nothing
was
in the
opened the
pandemic?
show, I think.
Just a straight singles match. They go like 15 minutes. It's awesome, and MJF wins it. And I was like, yeah, we'll be okay. And I think Perry, I like Sammy. I think has hit his ceiling as a worker, which I think is why he's kind of tumbled down the card. Jack Perry, I think there's more to him. I think there's still growth potential there with Jack Perry, and I think he can still reach the heights that AEW saw in him, back on day one. And I think, I don't think he'd be like a long term top guy, but I think he's a guy who can have a Darby style reign where we all assume it's going to be, 6 weeks max. Like I think he can pull that off, and I'm still confident in Jack Perry to continue to grow and get to the levels that people see in him, and I think rightfully so.
Yeah, I mean, he's 28,
Yeah, he's not even
so
30.
yeah, so he's not even 30, and um, I don't know if I ever see him as like in the world title picture, but I think people talk about him like he's like dead weight and he's completely useless. I just think that's not true at all. He still
Yeah,
has, especially for like a mid-card guy, he still has crowd connection and he's a very good wrestler and he's young. So
right.
those are all things he has going for him. Hasn't been clean, obviously. And I think the heel run and just I don't know if he'll ever be like have the kind of physicality necessary to wrestle convincingly at the highest level.
I
Um,
can see that. And I don't see him as like a main event promo ever. I think he's moving in the right direction with his
mhm.
promos, but he's not there yet. But you know what I would comp Jack Perry to? Considering he's only 28 now, I didn't realize he was still in his 20s. He's like if Tyler Bate was in like he's like if Tyler Bate was in a real wrestling company. Cuz I think Tyler Bate has like similar flaws to Jack Perry. I think Bate's a better like wrestler than Perry like was like to start with.
Yeah, and Bate was a better wrestler. I don't know what he's doing now.
He probably like, but Bate doesn't have that. He doesn't have that dog in him. He's happy just, getting paid whatever he's getting paid and sitting in Florida and
He's
banging
not sitting
hot
in Florida, isn't
blondes.
he on the AAA thing doing the El Grande gimmick?
He flies down there. Probably. I don't know this for sure. I'm just talking out of my ass here.
You should know who. Give me all the members of the El Grande Americano faction.
There's Axel Dieter Jr., who's the babyface one in Mexico. There's Chad Gable, who's the heel one in Mexico.
He's El Grande Americano.
He's the original one. And then Bate and Dunn are like Alpha and Bravo. I'm
Oh yeah,
not
that's
gonna
right.
pretend to know which one's which. Pete Dunn, what happened there? Anyway, but yeah, I compared Jack Perry to Tyler Bate, which is how we got there. But yeah, I think there's more to Jack Perry, I believe, and I think we're gonna see it because Tony obviously believes in him. It's just a matter of him continuing to develop and not, getting comfortable and
Yeah,
maybe staying out of trouble.
I think when looking at a lot of these guys, it is noticeable how many people that were on these early shows that are still in AEW, but they don't necessarily still have to be in AEW. A lot of them are just kind of doing undercard work or
Yeah.
have missed TV for large swaths of time, but are still technically in the company. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that Tony doesn't like releasing anybody or Tony feels indebted to a lot of these people for being his original hires or things like that. But as the roster has gotten deeper and evolved and gotten more talent as they become available and other talent has matured, there still is employment for most of these people, even the people that really don't necessarily serve a major purpose currently.
Yeah. I would I would say it's just because Tony doesn't like cutting people.
Well,
I
these
would
people presumably have been re-signed.
well, yeah. Well, it would have had to have been they would have had to have, yeah, because it's been longer
Well,
than
I'm just
5
looking at the people
years.
that are
So
on
yeah.
this third episode of third edition of Dynamite, right?
Yeah.
Scorpio. So Frankie Kazarian's not in the company anymore. He left on his own volition to go to TNA, similar to
Uh-huh.
Santana. He wanted to do single stuff. Scorpio Sky still in the company in undercard role. Trent, still in the company in an undercard role. Chuck Taylor, retired, still with the company working backstage. Ortiz, still in the company in an undercard role. Santana, left under his own volition, similar to Frankie Kazarian. Alex Reynolds and John Silver, still in the company in undercard roles. Riho, still technically in the company in an undercard role. Britt Baker, still with AEW, haven't seen her in 2 years. Penta and Ray Phoenix both left the WWE. Jungle Boy, still in the company, not in a mid card role. Marco Stunt was released by the company for the incident we talked about. And then everyone else is like a main eventer, Adam Page,
Yeah.
Kenny Omega, Moxley, Pac, all those people. But like a lot of these guys are still getting paychecks, presumably from AEW, despite the fact that they are not huge individual stars of particular importance to the company.
Yeah, and that is probably out of some type of loyalty and Tony seeing some use for them in some aspect of the company. Like, there's a lot of guys you name that are like that are regulars on ROH, Dark Order's down there. I mean, those guys have jobs until Brody Lee Jr. gets of age.
Coming faster than you think. I was
Yeah.
shocked to find out he had a wrestling match. I thought he was still like 9 years old.
Nope, 14. And by the way, Eric Rowan also released, so he may end up in that mix as well. Uh, um, yeah, Ortiz is with Eddie Kingston in ROH right now. So yeah, it could just be a matter of Tony having a lot of slots to fill, and you got to have people at the bottom, and these are people that he trusts, that he's that believe that bleh, that have been treated well and still want to stay there. And yeah, I mean,
And
you
then,
could go out and get new guys, but you've got these guys here who
mhm.
are willing to do the dirty work.
And then the other thing is, with the exception of Cody, all of the original like top stars are also still around, right? Kenny
Yeah.
Omega, Chris Jericho, Hangman, John Moxley. Guys like CM Punk came and went, but they're not part of the original crew.
And then new guys have been integrated in. Well, did you say MJF in that mix too?
No, because I don't consider
Because he
MJF like as
wasn't
a
a main
top.
event.
Yeah,
He
he's
wasn't
not
a
a
main
top
event
guy
at start.
came in. He's more like Darby, right? We bring them
Yeah,
along, brought
but
along more slowly.
they brought, my point is, they brought like new guys in like Swerve and Osprey, and they've
Hmm.
elevated guys like
Yeah, I'm not
MJF
saying it's
and
the same
Darby
guys at the
to,
top. I'm just pointing out that like it's
yeah,
not just the undercard guys that seem to stick around a long time. I think there is something to be said that the guys who were there at the very beginning of the company maybe understand and appreciate the vision more than guys who were brought in later, who were tempted by big money or whatever.
yeah. And I was more just putting over how AEW's like refresh that main event scene while still having those original main eventers. Like in wrestling history, that happens because the old guys left and went to a different territory. Tony's been able to keep those guys around and for the most part keep them over. The only struggle was with Jericho, and he took a long break, came back, and at least for now he seems, got some energy behind him. So
Yeah, I mean, Jericho has largely been phased into a mid-card role. He's still around a lot when he's used, but
yeah.
he's not like headlining pay-per-views anymore.
Right. And he hasn't probably since he
No, he
lost the
hasn't in a while.
belt.
He's been a mid-carder for years now.
Yeah, like there was that like one Moxley title match on Dynamite in like 2022 where it felt like, oh, this is Jericho's last shot.
Hmm.
And to date, I believe it is.
Are you referring to the Quake on the Lake?
Yes, the Quake on the Lake. That match is excellent. That stands out in my head as like that was an excellent title match.
Yeah, man, I can't remember shit, but for some reason I could remember that match. Like I couldn't tell you what was on like the card of like
Oh
all
God,
in,
no.
all in or all out like 2023. I couldn't tell you anything about that show, but like for some reason I remember the Quake on the Lake. I think it was in St. Paul, Minnesota. Um,
Yeah. Tyler Forness was probably there.
yeah, he can confirm that this indeed happened. Did happen. All right, Suit. I know we talked a little bit about your projects before, but you got anything you want to plug extra?
Yeah, well, it's the same thing. I'm just gonna plug it again. Suitwilliams.com for show reviews, um, long-term writing projects such as good as it gets, such as Williams watches WrestleMania, such as my list of the 50 greatest matches in WrestleMania history. You also get show reviews. I reviewed both AEW Dynasty and both nights of WrestleMania at suitwilliams.com. Today, I just checked it. I am on track to break the monthly record for the site with about a week to spare, surpassing last April and my reviews last year. So, moving in the right direction there. The work does not stop. Suitwilliams.com. You can also catch more of my work at voicesofwrestling.com as well. I will be reviewing the rest of WWE's PLE outputs on voicesofwrestling.com. I also have a project going on there called Project 434, where I review CM Punk's 434-day world title reign, month by month, pay-per-view by pay-per-view. The next one will be coming out on April 29th, which is the anniversary of his Extreme Rules match against Chris Jericho. So be sure to look out for that and any other columns I have, voicesofwrestling.com.
All right, thanks, Suit. Thanks for joining us again, once again, and I appreciate all our listeners, and I'll talk to everyone again after a while.
Hi, I'm Andrew Rich, and if you're like me, you look at the state of modern wrestling discourse and think, wow, what a cesspool. That's why I'm here to tell you about Music of the Mat Remix. That's right, your favorite wrestling music podcast is back with a new format, where I bring on a guest and we play songs related to wrestling-themed topics. It could be a wrestling reference, a wrestling concept, a wrestling pun, things of that nature. Now you might be saying, Andrew, that is a very, very tenuous connection to pro wrestling on a wrestling podcast network. Is this just an excuse to hang out with your friends and talk about music and ignore the rest of the wrestling landscape? Yes. Yes, it is. So listen to Music of the Mat Remix on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, available on Apple, Spotify, or your podcast player of choice.